Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 6. And as we discussed last week, I wanted to show you some of the advanced features of Trial Director, but I wanted to split it up into you doing a single clip first before we did some multi-clips and overview of some of the things we've done thus far. So this class will serve as kind of a refresher of some of the things we've done in the past and how it fits together, as well as showing how to create multiple clips from a for a single how to incorporate multiple clips into a single clip playable within the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Uh, I want you to imagine for a second that we've been in trial for a few weeks, and we have been getting new exhibits all along. And so, if you remember, one of the things that I think is key is good organization. So I've created folders here for the types of electronic files that we have in our case. So I have exhibits, PowerPoint, video, transcripts. And if you remember, I like to create an initial import of the data, and then I have an addendum folder where I date each additional import of data into our case. So today, when I'm doing this, it's August 7th. And I'm going to import 3 new exhibits that I received from opposing counsel, probably late in the middle of the night. And remember, one of the things we talked about was creating a workflow that is repeatable for every single exhibit. So, depending on the formats that you agreed to exchange them in, hopefully they've come totally compliant with the trial management order, with branding, with in the proper format. But sometimes it just doesn't happen, and when that does happen, you need to go talk to your legal team. That's the whole burden shifting argument that we talked about before. Onesie twosie stuff I might not care about so much, but if they dump a load of unprocessed data not compliant with the trial management order on you, I would probably have a pretty serious conversation with your legal team about the burden that's going to create upon you and how late you're going to have to stay up and how not fresh you'll be the next day in court. So, and how unfair that is. But sometimes they say, okay, I hear you, trial guy or gal, but it is what it is and we're going to do it. I don't want to deal with this tech stuff. And other times you get a team that is like, yeah, let's go get them. So I think it's just a really smart consultative thing to do anyways with burden shifting. So talking more about exhibits, as you can see, we've worked pretty exclusively in PDFs. When we talked about exhibits a few weeks ago, I mentioned unitization and image load files. That's a skill you definitely need to master at some point. But if you're just beginning and you're comfortable with Adobe Acrobat, there's no reason why you couldn't do all those features in using Adobe. You just have to master Adobe, right? But it's kind of an easier way to get started and then learn those more advanced features as we go. So let's go ahead and import these 3 new exhibits, of course, and this is a reminder of what we did in the last couple of weeks here. And we're going to create a new document for each file we added. We're not going to add a prefix to what we already have because I've named the files. See here, I've already named the files how they should be named, and those should be according to the trial management order. The trial management order should have some sort of naming convention in it. You have a few options here with being able to add the folder name that they're in, things like that. I never use that. I never add the page number suffix to each page ID, but there's times where that could pop up, but I haven't had to do it in a long time, so I don't think I've ever used this feature, as a matter of fact. So we're going to hit OK, and we're going to refresh the case explorer here by hitting the 2 arrows. And as you can see, it's added my 3 exhibits down here. And one thing that is both good and bad about the way Trial Director imports PDF files is that it's going to add a suffix to every single page of that PDF. So if you see here, we have Trial Exhibit 199. Here's page 2 of 199, page 3, page 4, and so on and so on. Same thing for the others. This is one is a lot longer. I want you to notice, just real quick, here I am on Trial Exhibit 199. And if I go to the lower right-hand corner, you can see how many pages there are in the exhibit. And I'm on how many pages there are in the exhibit itself. So page 7 of 10. This is good, but remember we did talk about project management a little bit and maybe having a report right in front of you that says Trial Exhibit 199 has 10 pages and here's the range. Remember that was an assignment that we did a few weeks ago. That's helpful to you, especially if you're kind of maybe working and presenting things and you're also trying to figure out what the next exhibit is or how many pages are in an exhibit or something along those lines. And the reason why it's important you know how many pages are in an exhibit is that sometimes people call out the page number. See right here, like page 13 on this exhibit, they might say, call up page 13 of Trial Exhibit 1. And if you have your report there and you notice, oh, there's only 10 pages in there, you know that you have to come back here to the working screen and figure out which one's which page that is. So it's actually Trial Exhibit 1, page 7. That goes back to one of the things we talked about in the beginning about working with your team, about them being able to call out the right numbers and being familiar with the naming scheme used in court. You should always be using that trial exhibit number. People use old Bates numbers, they use the old page numbers, and you see lots of confusion happen in court because people don't know which number they should be calling out on the page. Always use that trial exhibit number and page number. So it's not good enough to say Trial Exhibit 1. You need to have them, you need to coach them into saying Trial Exhibit 1, page 7. Okay, so after I've imported these new exhibits, maybe we've been asked to do some new video clipping. And we did a few video clips here last week to Stacy King, and I wanted to point out something. It's really important that you just have these really set in stone naming conventions for yourself. You don't have to use the ones I use, but find something that works for you and go with it. For example, for Stacy King, I like to always use her, use a deponent's initials for my clip names. So SK1, right? We did SK1 and SK2 last week. This is important because if you had, let's say, 50 people here, and you wanted to know which ones were the Stacy King, you could use this drop down, go to clips, and you'd be able to pick out that Stacy King exhibits. And I want you to notice again, you can see which ones I did because it has the page line references in that description box. And because it doesn't really do a lot of good for me to know what the first line is of what's happening in the transcript. So let's go ahead and transcript items. Let's go ahead and open the transcript, and we're going to do what it's called a multi-clip. And a multi-clip is where you've been asked to take a couple of different sections of a transcript, put them together as a single playable clip. And the reason we do that, there's a couple different reasons why we do that. One, a witness may not be able to show up, so the parties, the plaintiff and the defense, make an agreement as to which testimony should be played in court. And either you or the other side's trial tech will put together this big compilation video of lots of clips that kind of allow that witness who can't show up to testify. Another way that multi-clips show up is if there's a bunch of objections in a particular section of text, and you would have to take those objections out, so you have to clip around it, and that can get a little frustrating. There are some tools built into Trial Director that should alert you to long periods of silence or to objections being in the video. The funny part is it won't pick up I object, but it will pick up objection. So, and there's no word, I did a search here, the word objection doesn't show up in the entire transcript, but the word object does, and it doesn't, but that does not cause kind of some of the automatic features here to pop up. And I want you also to be very wary of those automatic features. It'll say, do you want me to automatically clip this stuff for you? And I often say no and just clip it the way I want to clip it. The reason why is it tends to be a little off, and I don't want to overly rely on Trial Director to do it for me. So I like to do each clip myself. That way I know how it works and what it should sound like and where the problems are. So let's go ahead and do a quick multi-clip. So I'm going to go to, let's say I've been asked to do, you'll typically get a report. It'll be page line to page line. And again, I want to be very accurate with what I'm clipping. So I'm going to do page 10, lines 1 through 4. And that's going to be my new clip. And just a quick side note, someone asked, why do we do all this clipping versus just playing everything on the fly? There's a couple reasons. One, we want everything to work perfectly, and we never know what's going to happen when we play video on the fly. You could have a technical glitch in the middle of it and not know about it. You could have a period in the middle of the deposition where they went and took a break and they just let the video play for 5 minutes. So it's 5 minutes of silence, and you don't know where that next place is that they take up. It's a little scary for trial text to play that. You just never really know what you're going to get unless you've pre-clipped the video. So I'll tell you, it's the most time-consuming part of the case if you have lots of video to clip. And you might clip dozens or hundreds, probably hundreds of video clips, sometimes thousands, and only use a very, very, very small percentage of them. So I've clipped my first clip here, and here it is. And now, if you notice, I can add sections of it. So I'm going to add 11:04 to 12:05, and these are just examples. It's not really for content. And I'm also going to add 14:04 to 14:18. Now I got to test each one of these, right? And I got to adjust it.
When you and Jim Smith met,
that looks okay.
Is this Testimony Tuesday?
I'm going to sharpen that up a little bit.
Is this Testimony Tuesday?
and do you recall what was focused?
Looks good.
By hollow down in the case.
A little too much time.
By hollow down in the case.
Okay, next one. You can see right here, it's starting in the middle of some audio somewhere. So let's listen.
Any thought? Thought.
Let's see, where are they? Okay, let's go over here a little bit.
And you can't analyze.
Okay, so this one was pretty far off.
And you can't analyze.
I see lots of dead space here.
Try and answer them as best as I can.
There we go. So now let's name our clip. Again, we have SK1 and 2. Let's call this one SK.003. I want to make sure I know it's a multi, and I might put the page and lines to 4. Let's do 11:04 to 12:05, 14:04 to 18. Comment in there. Update. So now I have this clip, SK003, and it has, let's do it this way. Tells me the page and lines for that, because when they call it out, the attorneys are going to say usually, Your Honor, I want to play a clip from, let's see, what's this lady's name again? Stacey King. It's going to be lines 14.4 through 14.18. The attorneys will often go through a period where they argue over whether the clip is complete or not, and then they'll get permission to play it. So that's how that would typically go down in court. But I'm going to show you a couple other things before we move away from clips. One thing you're often asked to do is export these clips because someone should be reviewing them. I mentioned earlier about long periods of silence and other things going on in the video. If you don't want to be the judge of whether a long period of silence or the way someone is acting on the video, because people act really weird when they get deposed sometimes. You don't want to be the judge of that. You don't know often if that person's good for you or bad for you. It's good info to ask when you're starting up, but you want to go back to the legal team and say, hey, there's lots of silence in some of these clips. Do you want to keep it, not keep it? I always think it's great if someone assigns you a bunch of video clips. I really like giving them back all those video clips on a external drive or a thumb drive or something like that, and letting them review to see if that's what they intended, because sometimes they're just reviewing that material as it states in the transcript, and they don't know what this person looks like on video. Sometimes they present so horribly that they go, forget it, we're just going to read this aloud in court because they look horrible, they look angry, or they look dishonest or something like that. So there's lots of decisions to be made about how things look in court, and you want to offer your input, and but you don't want to be the person that makes the final decision on these kinds of things. So let's say you've made some clips, and now you need to export them. So you would just go to export clips, export clips, export selected clips. So let me go back here and select a few. Export mine. Export selected clips. I usually keep the selected output settings. Most of the trial presentation programs work better with MPEG-1 than the more modern video standards. When it comes to synchronized text, they can play just about anything, but in general, you're going to want things in MPEG-1, maybe MPEG-2. But I still ask for my video in MPEG-1, which is an older standard. I just know it'll work that way. So I'm going to put these in my exported clips folder. There we go. And what it's doing is it's exporting each one of those clips out. Just about done. Okay, it's done. And what that gives you, is now standalone exported clips. I'll play this in Windows Media Player.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to Mr.
There's my
Smith's
standalone
testimony?
clip.
I think it was his testimony Tuesday?
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Then it would have been the day before. We met on Monday morning at approximately 9 a.m. or a few minutes thereafter.
Mr. Smith indicated at his deposition
Let's
that
go
at the
to our
meeting you reviewed some of
clip number 3 here. Uh-oh, something, let's see. No. I had a bad file association here. Let me change that. So play with Windows Media Player.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to
This is
Mr.
my
Smith's
multi-clip
testimony?
we created
I
together.
think it was. Was his testimony Tuesday?
And do you recall what was focused on?
There are some, let's see if I can get this to work right. Excuse me for 1 second here. There's a way to get the synchronized text to work with Windows Media Player. I'll look it up real quick, and I'll do a really quick standalone video on how to do that. That's what the SMI file does. That's the synchronized text to the video. So it's actually pretty nifty to be able to send someone the video with the synchronized text, with it. So let me, I'll figure that out and I'll get back to you on that. Okay, so there's my standalone clips, and again, I can call those up. Let's go over here to my presentation preferences so you can see what that would look like on the screen. And as long as we're here, let's go through some of these basic presentation preferences. So the stage is where you're presenting the video. And you know, if you have that extended desktop, you would usually select that you want to show show everything on your secondary monitor. I'm going to show it on my primary monitor because I'm doing a screen capture so you guys can see it, and then I'll have to switch it back. These are just, do you want a reflection of the document? You can see it down here in the bottom part, how it's going to kind of look. I never use that. Spotlight, kind of like a stage underneath. I've never used that feature. There's a couple other themes that you can use. For the most part, I don't use it. It is something I'm kind of looking at a little bit, just so I can differentiate our presentation from whatever the other guy is doing. This is some toolbar options. I don't think that it works all that well. The icons are a little small. That might just be because I'm getting older here, but even when you do tablet toolbar, it doesn't really help you as much when you're using the PC version of the program. Now this is very helpful. Zone transitions, I always jack the speed up for the transition. The transition is when you take one exhibit down and put the next one up. So I always do the transfer and fade speed all the way to fast. I think by default they're somewhere else other than all the way to fast. Default zone mode. What that is the computer, let me show you right down here, it's broken up into zones, and by default you're in zone 9, and that's the entire screen. But as you can see, there's zones 1 through 8 as well. Zone 1 is left, zone 2 is right, 3 is top, 4 is bottom, 5 is upper left, 6 is upper right, 7 is lower left, 8 is lower right. But and we get into that. We won't get into that very much into this class. It's a more advanced technique, and it's one that I think it's easy to kind of pick up as you go along. But we're just trying to get you to get stuff up on screen, be able to enlarge it and highlight certain sections of the text so that you can go in and do an arbitration or something along those lines. I think that would be an excellent opportunity if you can start out there. So going back to default zone mode, replace zone, what it does is completely replaces whatever document is in here when you call up a new document, versus push might, if you had a couple of zones going, it might push the existing document over to another zone, and the new document comes up in the zone that the document was previously in. So if you had documents on the left and the right, if you had it in push, it would push the document over to the right and bring up your new one, versus replace would just replace that single document. Let's see. A lot of people are into the hotkeys. I don't. I'm a person that uses the mouse. So there's keyboard controls for just about everything. So if you are a keyboard control person, you should study those keyboard controls, but I'm not a person that does that at all. Let's see. Some of the default tools, I like to bump up my line thickness a little bit. So it's a little bolder. And that's, for the most part, what we use here. Projections, how your projections will behave when you do an enlargement. I like to keep the lines and animate the projection callouts, which means that it'll provide one provides lines coming from the area that was highlighted or called out, and the other, rather than the enlargement just appearing, it does a thing so it looks like it's jumping from the document. Big whoop-de-doo, I know. Let's see. Smartboard is a really cool giant whiteboard that you can that is a really advanced way of doing annotations in the courtroom. It gives the attorney a lot of flexibility, but we just don't use it very much because it's really expensive, and we do a lot of big trials. So in its right place, it'll do it's really good, but we just haven't used it that much. It had a lot of promise, but it just hasn't been implemented in a big way. And that's kind of it. So that's a long way of saying I just want to show on my primary monitor what these videos would look like. And again, I give it a moment. I'm going to type in very slowly. Here's the video, the multi-clip video.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to Mr. Smith's testimony?
I think it was. Was his testimony Tuesday?
And do you recall what was focused on in the comments about the lines of inquiry with other deponents?
Not much.
I hit escape, and that takes anything off the screen. Whether it's an exhibit or a video or anything like that, when a video is playing, I always have my finger hovering over escape in case. Actually, I have my finger holding over the pause button on the video, so that if someone throws out an objection and goes, "Stop the video," someone will yell, "Stop the video," objection. And first of all, I take that direction from the judge and my own legal team. But I will pause it until the objection is heard and then restart it. And you would use one of these tools over here that we saw last week, this one. So let's play again.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to Mr. Smith's testimony?
I think it was.
I'm going to take this down. Let me do this one more time. And I'm going to prepare another tool, which there's this tool. I'm not sure you can see it, but it's a green arrow and a red arrow coming up and down. You won't see it. I'm adding it to my toolbar. You won't see it when I do it, but you'll get the idea of what I'm doing. Oops. So I'm playing the video.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to Mr. Smith's testimony?
Someone yells objection.
I think it was. Was his testimony?
And I hit this green and red arrow, and what it does is hide the presentation for a moment. They argue it out like crazy. They say, okay, okay to proceed. I put the video back up, and I hit play.
Tuesday?
And you keep going.
And do you recall what was focused on in the comments about the lines of inquiry with other deponents?
It's always nerve-wracking with video, and one of the reasons why we clip everything out in advance. Now I am going to presentation preferences. I'll put the presentation now on the secondary monitor. And you're not going to see some of these things, but I want to show you how I typically do my presentation. So I use the extended desktop. That means I have my working screen, which you can see now, and the presentation screen on a different, on the courtroom system, on all those monitors that we set up before, right? And there's a feature where I can say toolbar, and I detach the toolbar, and you see it pops up here. And what this allows me to do is run the entire presentation from my working screen. Oops. It was, what is it? SK, not TK. I think you'll hear it. You won't see it. So I can run it from here.
When you and Jim Smith met with Mr. Drummond, was that prior to Mr. Smith's?
Pause it, do those different things. And what I like about this is it allows me to do a lot of work without the jurors seeing me click on things or hit play or do any of those kinds of things. So, and it also I can click on the highlighters and all that to select that feature. So I like that feature. I like I like detaching the toolbar, using it on one screen and playing it on another. So it might be something that you want to check out on your own time here. Let me bring up, let's see. What was it? 201? Jeez, here. TX02. See, I don't know my own naming convention here. Okay, so here's, and you won't be able to see the effect of this on screen, but having this little player here, I can go page by page. I can use the slider to go page by page. And I can also rotate the image on screen. And that's kind of important because you don't always get all the images don't come always oriented in the correct direction. So whoops, something comes up sideways, you have to be able to rotate it, and these are the buttons that you could use. You could also use these buttons up here, and another one of the reasons why that's undo, sorry. One of the reasons why I like using the detached toolbar so much. I'm sorry, you do that from down here. And let's see. So I think that's it for this week. For this week, if you could create, for an assignment, if you could create a multi-clip, I can exit out of this real quick. I'll just do another quick one just so you can see it. So I don't care what the actual content is. Let's go down a little bit. So question and answer, create new clip. Now I come up here to my clip editor, and I can add some other areas. I don't know what I'm doing this in the blind here, so. Oops, there's no 30. 24 lines, pretty standard. I check my start and end times.
Did you understand that?
There you go.
Adverse or not, I don't know.
Start a little closer.
Move to strike the comment.
That's actually from an objection, so probably wouldn't in real life keep that.
Side and initiate as a.
So that's where we stop it. We're done. We name it SK04, and this is a multi-clip example. Update. Here's my clips, SK04 right there. And we would, of course, export it. So someone can QC it. There we go. And that's it. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you need my help, I am happy to get on the phone with you, Skype, whatever we need to do to make sure that I'm conveying to you all what you need to learn and that you understand it. I would highly encourage you, if you have any confusion whatsoever, to give me a call or an email and let's figure something out. Thank you very much, and we'll get back on track next week with some of the other a new technology area. I think it'll either be case map or transcript management. So this was the hardest part of the class, ladies and gentlemen. Don't give up now. We're almost through with this, and let's get through this. Okay. Thank you so much.